Morning, everyone. Just call the meeting to order for the Board of Water and Wastewater Commissioners at the Harwich Water Department, 196 Chatham Road, Harwich, Mass. For Thursday, March 23rd at 11:30 a.m. We have no public comments or announcements. Consent agenda, you have the minutes in front of you for March 9th, the corrected minutes for March 9th, 2023.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the minutes of March 9th, 2023 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, no abatements, old business, FY24 Assistant Wastewater Superintendent. Dan.
All right, so I put essentially all the discussion points that were to be discussed with the Board of Selectmen at this past Monday's meeting, just so that we could kind of debrief, recap. I think at the last meeting we had a typo on the agenda which prevented us from discussing the Assistant Wastewater Superintendent position, so I did include the draft job description as well as the memo that I put together for the Selectmen.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the assistant position? Noreen.
Only one. So, I mean, that was great. We passed that hurdle of the Board of Selectmen with no problem. So our only other hurdle will be town meeting. So I'm not going to go on about it now, but just that we get our thoughts together. Should there be any contention, hopefully it will just be all people saying it's obviously needed, our very first employee. So I'll just mention that we have one more step to go.
All right. Anybody else?
If I can just add, I will also, born out of Monday's meeting, include in the explanation for the sewer operating budget that the figures in the warrant do include the addition of the new position and have those figures broken out.
So there's no funding in there now?
There is funding in there now,
okay.
but just to identify in the explanation that
Yeah.
funding is reflected in the budget.
Okay, all right.
Well, that'll be good.
All right. Yeah, that's good.
It's the 80,000 that's in there.
Yeah, and then the 27 or so for the fringe benefits. I'll also
Right.
break
Yep.
out.
Right.
And you'll have those like as separate amounts, right?
Yeah.
So they won't think that the salary is, okay. Thank you.
I have nothing. We've been over this many times, so we're good?
Yeah.
Good. Yep. All right, FY24 water and wastewater budgets.
All right, also included in the packet were the budget documents from the Selectmen's meeting. I would ask that the board reconsider motions taken at the last meeting, because there were some changes that we had done the morning of that weren't reflected in the votes for the water budget and for the wastewater budget. So just to sync everything up with what's printed in the final draft warrant that the Selectmen reviewed, as well as what was in their packet for Monday, I would just ask that the board re-vote the water budget for the total amount of $4,552,834. And the changes that were made at the last meeting that ultimately changed the total figure was the reduction in long-term debt administrative fees and the addition of an additional $6,000 debt item that was newly charged to us last year.
So I would move to reconsider our vote on the Water Enterprise Fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
What was the final number now?
$4,552,834, which I can show you.
4 million.
You got it.
Huh?
You got, oh, you're on Munis. What page forward, Alan? Yeah, you got it. That one more, right there, right there. It's the, yeah, there you go. Right down, where do we pen this?
Oh,
4.5.
4 million.
552,834.
Okay, good, all right, cool. All right. So I'll move.
Well, we have a motion.
Oh, okay, I second.
We have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Now, Alan, if you want.
And now a motion to approve the $4,552,834 total budget.
So move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And then I would request a similar action be taken relating to the wastewater operating budget. The revised total for that is $1,993,973.
I move that we reconsider the vote from last meeting on the wastewater budget.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And then a motion to approve the $1,993,973 wastewater
So moved.
fund. Second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
All right?
Aye.
Thank you.
If I could also request a reconsideration of the amount proposed at the last meeting to be transferred from the current operating budget with respect to the debt for Phase 2 that was anticipated that did not hit. We voted last meeting to reappropriate $857,446, which should be $858,742, which balances the $1,993,973.
So I'll move to reconsider the reappropriation vote from last meeting, which at last meeting was $857 because it's been adjusted.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. So I'll move that we reappropriate
$858,742.
$858,742 from last year's budgeted debt amount towards FY '24 debt amount.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
We may want to strike debt amount,
Okay,
just so that in the event that the debt is less than the $858,
Right.
it could be used to supplement
Right.
expenses or other.
so we'll say subsidy. What do you want me to say?
Not to exceed?
Yeah, just to reappropriate from the FY '23 sewer operating budget in the amount of $858,742 towards the FY '24 wastewater operating budget.
What Dan said.
Yeah.
That's the amended. We have a second, we have amended. Any further discussion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
That's it?
That's it for the numbers right now.
That's
Okay.
it. No more number talk.
Wait a
2023.
minute, before you run away.
Yep.
Where was the 858,720?
So those are actually not contained within the budget
Okay.
documents themselves.
Okay, all right, I'm okay.
That's going to be ultimately part of the motion at town meeting to fund the sewer operating budget.
Okay,
Those
yeah,
amounts.
we had that discussion at the selectmen's meeting with
Yeah.
that number. Okay, all right, I'm all right,
Moving right along.
move right along.
Dan, 2023 annual town meeting articles.
Again, I included this just so, in case anything rose out of Monday's meeting, we could certainly have a discussion about it. So I don't know if there is a separate agenda topic for the discussion of wells, so I don't know
Yeah,
if
see
the board
that.
wants to deliberate on the articles, or we could table this one.
Well, we can talk about the articles. I mean, we have it right here, the water department front page. Are there any questions regarding the water department? The articles we have going forward for the water department. Let's start with the water department first.
No.
I mean, it's just pretty straightforward. All right? All right, let's move on to the wastewater articles. Again, I just think the meeting went really well. I think it was well-received, and I actually spoke to the chair afterwards and just said how much I appreciated that. I feel as though it's been a while since our two boards have been on the same page and have felt supported, and I think it's the best thing going forward, you know, for the town. And it just felt nice to bring projects forward and be supported. So I thanked him and his board for their time. Noreen?
We're looking at wastewater articles, and so we'll drop the third bullet, since that will not have to be an article. So the bullet that says Assistant Wastewater Superintendent, that will be in the budget. It will not be a separate article, but we'll certainly be
Yeah,
going for
okay,
it.
yeah,
All right,
yeah.
all right. Old business. All right, so the, we'll go with that, right?
Yeah, but I think we were skipped the bylaw.
Water restrictions is next.
Yeah.
Yep. So water restrictions, bylaw, and special legislation.
You wrote it.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Just about the, what, is there like, and I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to go and watch Mondays. What are the arguments or the reasoning behind putting all these into one warrant, all the budget, all these different jobs? Did they articulate that at all?
Yeah, so what they're proposing to do is include a table at the bottom of the funding article for the budget to identify the position. But instead of having the approval of the position be a standalone article with its own separate funding, they're proposing to keep the funding within the operating budget and just identifying new positions in a table beneath it.
Okay, and what if somebody in the audience objects?
They can amend it or vote against it.
I think
Or
that's,
pull out different jobs and talk about them, and that's my concern.
I guess what
We're like, for months.
Yeah.
how I would see it unfolding, I guess, right? And let's
Yeah.
use the wastewater budget just as an example. If,
Yeah, I don't see us having a problem,
Okay.
not at all.
Not
No,
us,
but
not
no,
this
but no.
position,
But
but
even
this
the position-
position being with
No.
other positions.
I'm not even concerned.
Okay.
I mean, for one thing, once we get up, we have to make an argument for it. There's no problem that I see.
No, I don't see
I
a
don't
problem with
think
this
yours
either.
is what about the
I'm not
deposition.
articulating it well.
Right.
Yeah.
Just overall, over the
The
template, how they're
method
doing
of
it.
how they're
Right.
doing it,
So,
that
Let's
makes
just
me.
let them go.
yeah, I guess I would see it going something like this at town meeting, right?
Yeah.
So looking at the wastewater budget, it's to be funded in the amount of $1,993,973. If someone wanted to amend our budget to remove the assistant wastewater superintendent, they would have the totals, funding amounts for that position in the table beneath our budget, and they could motion to reduce our budget by that amount. So if town meeting is not in support of it, they would be able to motion, or in that process, I guess how I would see it. Same would be for town hall, the general operating budget in the amount of $40 million. They're, as I understand it, gonna have a table beneath it, and if they didn't wanna fund the HR position, for example, they would be able to reduce it by that
It
amount.
seems confusing, but that's how they're doing it.
Believe me, I just feel so comfortable with it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I just mean the way they're doing
I've seen over the
it.
years how things have gone.
Yeah.
This is simple.
Noreen?
Just quickly for Judith, it was a compromise, and personally, I'm very happy with it, and I spoke about this issue for years and years. Instead of doing the old method or the newer method, we're doing a third method. So what this does, the chart isn't quite as pretty as I would have liked it to be, but it gives people notice so that they can stand up and make a motion and do whatever they want, rather than have it all glommed in there. And that's all people ever really wanted, was just to have notice of what was in those gigantic numbers. So there'll be the chart that says 2 new building inspectors, 1 new dog catcher, 1 new this, and they can just stand up and say, I want to amend line such and such, $20,000 out of the
Take it
budget.
out, okay.
And then, of course, that motion would have to pass.
Right,
Yeah.
but it doesn't destroy the whole, I mean, I just kept
One thing-
envisioning us going back
Right.
to zero.
Yeah, one position won't, they won't vote against one position and everything
Right.
loses.
Okay.
They'll have to amend
That's-
whatever they want to amend.
Line by line.
The other great thing, though, is that the old method that had a separate article, the dollars were in the separate article, too. So this year, we have 7 jobs. The charts would never be correct. The operating budget charts that are in there, they would never be correct, and people look to those from year to year. So this is progress. It might not be, what everybody wants.
It's a great move.
It is, it really is. It's a new method, it's progress, and it's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I think of some of the debates over jobs.
Yeah,
No, this is good.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, sorry
All
to.
right. Water restrictions and bylaw, and special legislation.
So included in the packet was the most recent language from Attorney Giorgio with respect to the proposed revisions that we were discussing with him for the bylaw changes. Very simple strike through as we were proposing. So I just wanted those to be put before the board.
So this is basically just to amend the fines from $50 to $100 for the first violation, and then $100 to $300 for each subsequent violation.
Yeah.
Any more discussion or questions regarding this? All right. Think we're good?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Before you run away, let's see.
There should be
On
two in there.
the third page, down, there's an A through E, just above, let's see, 300-12, restrict. What's the automatic sprinkler use, huh? Aren't they, help me out, use of automatic sprinkler is prohibited. I mean, that's what they all are, aren't they?
Yeah. I'm gonna follow along.
Well,
John.
if this was a dam, a watering
Yeah.
dam, that would shut off automatic sprinklers. Is that what we're trying to do?
Yeah, so a declaration of water supply shall include one or more of the following restrictions.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. I gotta just read it in the broader sense,
Yeah, so
yeah.
this is kind of your menu to pick from when implementing restrictions.
Okay. All right. Okay, all right.
All right. All right, next is new business. Discussion regulating private wells. I asked Dan to put this back on the agenda so we could revisit this.
I'll make a motion to reconsider if you want.
Okay. Yeah, because we vote on it, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
a motion to, just so we can discuss it.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to reconsider a vote of last meeting on adding private wells to our jurisdiction.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Noreen. Thank you for keeping me on the straight and narrow.
Okay. I knew
So-
you wanted that.
I appreciate
so-
You know that elbow's coming, that's
It's
all.
not the elbow, it's the pen. It's the pen.
Yeah.
I got my protective glasses on.
I'm tired today.
Yeah,
It's been
no, no, no.
I
better.
think you are, because you're going pretty good over there.
Yeah, no,
So, just to go review the Monday's meeting, I asked Dan to put this back on the agenda, just because I wanted us to have another thought and look at this again. Originally, I was in favor and supported the article to bring it to the town and have the people, vote on it and look at it. And the more I thought about it over the weeks, it really concerns me putting language in there that we're gonna regulate people's private wells. It's a slippery slope. As a member of the board, I understand our want and need for it, but as a private homeowner, I wouldn't want someone coming to my property and telling me what I can do in my yard, and trying to regulate how we're gonna do that. And it's not only private well users, it's people with irrigation as well. So I would personally like to try to move forward with educating. I mean, Tom Birch was in here. I thought he was very good explaining to us the pros and cons of watering. Maybe put a pamphlet together for the next billing, educate people, and go in that direction right now. So my feeling would be to remove it for the article for town meeting for this year, and try to go on a different path as far as educating and
All right, so if we do that, I mean, I would just assume, you know, devote the efforts to getting control over what we have control over, you know? Yeah, it was easy for me to shut my well off.
Right.
But in the talk I've seen around town, you know, there's enough people, you know, feeling that, hey, yeah, it's not a bad idea, but at this point, let's take it step by step.
Yeah.
Let's see how the weather goes, and then,
Right.
yeah, at some point,
And I would really like to do something along the lines, the lens goes from, what, Sandwich to Orleans. I think we all need to get together as towns and all participate, because I feel as though it's one drop trying to fix an entire aquifer's problem. I mean, yeah, you drive down Dennis, Division Street, people aren't watering in Harwich and people are watering Dennis. So
That's right.
we're all under the same DEP regulations.
Yeah.
There's a water draw for the entire area, but we're the only ones, and I'm not, hey, I don't mind being the leading force behind it, I really don't. But I think education, getting other towns involved in educating and just making a huge impact,
Yep.
whereas we're just impacting a small percentage of it. And again, as far as the private wells are going, I mean, how much water are they pulling? Granted, I know every little bit counts, I do understand that. But I just think at this point with the private wells, I think this isn't the right step to go right now. That's just my opinion. Any other discussion or any other thoughts or opinions?
I agree.
I understand what you're saying, and I understand that there's gonna be people that are gonna be upset because they feel like their private domain is being invaded. But it's, what we did as a group, before the state did, that's talked about all over Cape Cod. I don't know if you guys realize that, but that's talked about all over Cape Cod. And I think even if it gets shot down in the town meeting, it will be one little step of education where people will have it on their radar and be thinking about it. And it's an opportunity, even if it gets shot down, it's an opportunity to then do follow-up education. As long as it does not become a, you know, people with pitchforks saying you're not coming on my property.
Right.
And
what I
every
see.
town has those, every place has those, you know, and they shouldn't drive on roads, quite frankly, because, you know, roads are in the common.
well, I,
You
you
know?
know, say what you want, I understand where you're coming from.
The water
I-
down
if
below
we're
is
gonna-
everybody's water.
5 towns draw from the same glass. Now, if we're gonna make people mandate that we're gonna shut down private wells and whatever else, we need the other 4 towns to
We
come
do.
along.
But
But
that's
at this
the
point,
Board of the Selectmen's
I'm
job.
not gonna, well, I don't see anything happen, so I'm not gonna beat myself up trying to get this to happen when I know just,
But I don't think we need to beat her. I think the consensus in town is that so many people reached out to me over private wells, like, you know, explain this to us, and doesn't it impact at some point, maybe not initially, you know, maybe, you know, we're looking at 20 years, but it's a knowledge thing.
I agree. And that's why I just feel as though, like you said, just what we're doing now, talking about regulating private wells, Orleans, it passed through Orleans, people are talking about it. So it's out there, and I do believe if we continue the education process before we go ahead and say, we're gonna regulate your private well, I have,
If there's an emergency.
right,
And it's not that we're gonna regulate it, I mean, we are, but it's the delivery of language that says you will be participating in this water ban like everyone else in town.
right, but the only difference is, it's their private well, that's the issue I'm having.
But that's for irrigation, right? It's not for household use, or my
They could use both.
misunderstanding.
They could use both, yeah. Do people have private wells for their home water, drinking water?
Yeah.
So then, is there something to make that, so the language is you can't, even if you have a private well, you can't irrigate? I understand what you're saying, you don't want them, they're inside the house taps to be,
Right, but how do we regulate that?
if they have an irrigation system in their yard. How do we enforce it, you mean?
Well, how do we regulate if they're using it for their home or if they're using it for the irrigation? If they have the plumbing?
Because you mean if the water coming into their house is not town water,
Well,
it's well
Yeah.
water, wouldn't they, John, wouldn't they have a separate, like a valve that they can shut off to
Can't,
the
they
irrigation?
have to be totally separate. You can't put the town into the,
not the town.
Not the
So
town,
well-
but
So
if
if someone has a
I-
private well.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
I have a private well and I do the inside of my house, but I also irrigate, I've got sprinkler systems.
oh, yeah.
Is
There's
there
a-
some
yeah.
way for me to shut off? I mean, is that like a
Yeah.
normal part of building out
Yeah.
a system?
You mean if the well, they're doing both,
Yeah,
their
they're drawing off of the well?
domestic water and irrigation off the same well?
Yeah,
Yeah, there'd be a valve that you could turn it off.
so why wouldn't they be able to turn off that valve for outdoor irrigation, like
They could.
anybody else in town?
So they could?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I thought this was, not that we're gonna make
Right.
them shut off their
Well,
household
there's-
water.
Right.
They passed it in New Orleans, right?
They
How are
did
they
pass laws.
gonna enforce it?
That's what I'm saying.
How are we gonna force any of it? I mean,
Right.
unless we
Right.
have like, but it's I see this as the beginning of
Well,
I
conversation.
think it's a step. I think it's a step.
I don't see it as, we don't have the staff to go out and, do this, but I think sometimes articulating these things is the beginning of our
You
education.
know what, I think we should take this as steps for increasing the fines this year.
But-
Let's see what happens.
But I don't, why would somebody that draws off a well, I don't understand why they think that, I don't get it,
You don't understand why someone who has a private well is what?
is upset about shutting off their irrigation system like everybody else in town during a water emergency.
Because they pay for it. It's on their private property.
If they
That's
pay,
like-
yeah, but
that's
a
like people-
homeowner, when you buy your house, you're still paying for the hookup to the town. It's not like.
No, they're putting them in separate
Well,
wells just
that's
for
their
irrigation.
business, and
Right.
they're putting the irrigation systems,
Right.
that's
Right.
not, that's great that they can put in an irrigation system, but that doesn't mean that they automatically can draw water out of the same cup of water that everybody else in town is
Well,
drawing
people,
out of.
so say, but the people with irrigation
Yeah,
are still watering just like people who have private wells.
So I have a private well
yeah,
and I have irrigation.
yeah,
And I did shut mine down because I can't speak for the Ford County, asking people
Right.
not to water the lawns and I'm there pumping it out. But for me, where I'm at, the water that flows onto my property, next stop is the ocean. So, I mean,
but aren't we talking about the entire town participating
sure,
in
sure.
this?
sure.
Irregardless of where in town you live?
Right, yeah.
Where in town that straw,
Yeah.
where into that uneven basin of water the straw goes?
Yeah, very true.
Because that's part of the education thing,
Right.
right?
Right.
So everybody that has an irrigation system should shut off their irrigation system when there's a water, and maybe that's how it needs to
Right.
be articulated.
Well, yeah, they shouldn't, but they're not.
Somehow.
Right, I said this at the meeting too. Let's just get back to that. Like,
He was great.
I said this at the meeting.
And I'm
I don't know if I said
sorry,
that-
I just.
I don't know if it's 90% of the town of Harwich, well users and water customers are doing the right thing. It's a handful of people who are choosing not to do it. And holding everyone accountable for a handful, I think, is unfair.
Why,
And
but why do you feel like everybody's being held accountable if they're already doing it. It's only
And
that
aren't they?
10%.
But people who aren't watering, that have wells,
Yeah,
are gonna be under the same guidelines as being regulated as the people who are using the wells.
I'm following the rules, or I'm following the request to
without
conserve
it
water
being a
because-
mandate.
Right.
Yeah,
But
Well, it
why
is
not
mandated,
have,
right.
by the mere fact that the water table was down, what,
yeah,
a foot and a half, or whatever it was, 2 feet, and, you know, we had a problem. And,
so why not request that of everybody in the town?
Request what?
That when there's a water emergency,
We already are. They're just not doing it.
the well people,
We
People-
are. Noreen,
I thought you were just wanting to take this out.
when we have a water ban,
Yeah,
everyone in the town of Harwich should be following the water ban, if you're a well user or if you're a water department customer.
okay.
And we should maybe put the wording in that for town water or well users. But
I
I'm,
thought you wanted to take the private well users language out.
He does.
I do.
Can I?
Noreen,
Okay. I
Sorry,
think-
I'm like totally
Okay.
missing
All
this.
right, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, what Gary's trying to say, and we did do this with every water statement last year, is we always request everyone to do it.
that's right.
So yes, he wants, sorry Gary, he wants us to request it, but not to require it or mandate it. So that's what he's saying. He's saying, take this out, but we'll continue. When we say we have a state of emergency, we're asking
Let's do it,
everybody
right.
that uses water, we're requesting everybody to do it.
Why not
But can-
mandate?
Well, can I, yeah,
Yeah,
okay, so, I had second thoughts as well, but my second thoughts have been the same for like 10 years. One is that, and Judith heard me before, I have a problem with telling the well owners who aren't in Zone 2 to shut down, you know, because they are not affecting our water use. Our water use comes from our pumping stations and from the wells that are within Zone 2, not from Allen's well, you know, not from, so I just have a problem telling people not to use something that has zero effect on our drinking water. So that's one, and, you know, I've been saying that for a long time. But my other biggest problem is, I'm just so sick of the government and putting laws on that we don't intend to enforce. And I said that Monday night, we won't be able to enforce this.
no, now, but down
well,
the road.
But well, then we can put it on then, we can force it. But what I'm saying is that adding a law to the books that you absolutely know you're not gonna be able to enforce, to me, I think education goes further than putting a law on the books that you are not going to enforce, you know.
Let me ask a question. If somebody puts in a well, do they need, I would assume they need to pull a permit?
Yeah.
So the town knows where every well is? So,
Mostly.
depending on how much revenue we do bring in on these permits, there is the opportunity to hire somebody to enforce that. So
It's regulated through the Board of Health, though,
Yeah.
just as a,
but I mean, if the data's there, the data on who has private wells, and would it show whether it's for in-house use or maybe
Yeah.
not, right? And we're only,
Because you can't have town water and you can't have
Right.
interconnecting. Well,
right, okay. So, and here's the deal. 20 years ago, people had no clue, for the most part, about what went on down below with water on Cape Cod. They just, you know, we lived here, but we just did not understand that it was a sensitive area, didn't understand about eutrophication along the coast, didn't understand that when you flush the toilets, it does affect what goes on
Right.
along the coast. But we do now, and we've actually run out of time on fixing that. So we've got an opportunity here, I think, to kick off in a strong way, a second step on the education, because we already did that first step with us putting in that ban in the first place, before the state even did.
Right.
I don't see this as punitive. I don't, because it's about watering outdoors. I see this as changing the way people the way people behave. It's a behavior change, and I don't see it as a government like break, and I understand that, but I don't see this.
So do you think that by just telling them that, I mean, I guess I'm not understanding, we know we're not gonna enforce it, so we're just gonna
I
tell
don't know
them.
that we know that we're not gonna enforce it. We know that it's a big
All right, everyone just hold on a
challenge to
second.
enforce it.
Everyone hold on a second. Noreen, finish what
Okay.
you're saying.
I feel that we're not gonna enforce it, the size of the department, the number of duties, and also enforcing something is a choice. We lost a lot of money last year by enforcing. Maybe we would have been better off with a much stronger education program. We lost all that time from 4 or 5 individuals. We lost the cost of the water happens either way, so, the revenue from the water happens either way. I think with enforcement, you've really got to decide where you're going to get the best bang for your buck. And I think it would be a bad business decision to try to enforce these. I truly do. I do not think the recompense for enforcing these, would be anywhere near the amount of our 15, 16 staff department. So I don't mind telling people that I don't think we're ever going to enforce it, because I would rather say what I feel than, pretend that there's going to be some enforcement out there. We may try to do something with the non-well people, depends on how the summer goes. We'll wait and see, but I think we get more bang out of our staff's buck by promoting different forms of education than enforcement. So since I think that, I don't see any reason to include wells at this point, because we haven't really, like Alan said, we haven't really, got a set program of actions in place for our non-well people, so that's...
Judith.
I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
Because I don't see it, I understand the business
Yeah.
side, I get that, I totally get that, but we're also talking about a resource.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about a resource, you also need to talk about a valuing of that resource. And I think having this on the books creates a higher value for water, shared water, irregardless of where you live in town. And I would hope that value spreads to the surrounding towns and throughout the Cape. I don't see this as punitive. I would love to have a conversation with somebody that disagrees with a ban on outdoor watering during, a drought situation when they're pulling off of a well.
Can I just throw one thing out there? Obviously this is very much a board discussion decision. But one thing that's just popped in my head as we're kind of teasing this out is we, the Harwich Water Department, are being basically forced into new regulations from Mass DEP as to the criteria and conditions for which they will declare drought on our region. I guess a concern that I would have is that when DEP evaluates, fire likelihood and stream flow and things that are unrelated to our aquifer in determining whether or not we should be in a drought, it imposes drought conditions on the Harwich Water Department from the state level that may not necessarily agree with what's in the aquifer beneath our feet, as was the case in 2016, if we are required through the new regulations to impose restrictions at that time. very much could be unnecessarily restricting people with wells who would otherwise have a right to use it. And looking at the groundwater would tell us it would be okay for them to use, but other triggers that the state's looking at are saying that we need to curb water use. So there is, I guess, at least the potential avenue. I don't know that, I guess just food for thought for the discussion, because if DEP is going to say, well, you're going to be in drought conditions much more than you have historically, and they're really not true drought conditions because we have an abundance of water under our feet, you know, it would be unfair, I guess, to be regulating people unnecessarily if that situation is, you know, exists.
Thank you. I hear what you're saying, I agree with you. I agree with you.
So somebody that's
Just
got-
kind of, let me just-
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying. My concern is regulating people on their private wells right now, here today. Down the road, maybe at some point we might have to go that route, but I'm just saying right now, with what we're doing the education, putting the fines in, hopefully that will deter people from doing it, and educating people, and maybe at some point, people are gonna be shamed when their neighbors have a brown lawn and they're still out there watering. I mean, I just think education right now, I would rather people voluntarily jump on the bandwagon and do the right thing, instead of us going in there with our water spigot shutting their water off because they just opt not to do it. I mean, you know, there are other things that people are doing that they shouldn't be doing as well. I'm just saying right now, today, I don't feel comfortable putting that ban on someone's private property, on their private well that they spent. You know what, honestly, if you're gonna put a well in to irrigate, I'd rather you do that than use the water that we're treating and putting on your front lawn. But that's their option that they have. I mean, I don't like it, and because I don't like it, doesn't mean I have to make somebody else not do it. I hope with education, they would get on board and just do the right thing. I mean, that's what it comes down to, is just trying to get people to do the right thing. And again, it's not just people with private wells irrigating. There are people with town water irrigation who watered throughout this whole thing. And it doesn't make it right. People did it, and we can't even control how many people are out there watering in the dark hours. So when you wake up, the road's wet, but no one's running irrigation. I mean, it's just, whoever had a green lawn will run. We know that, but how do you catch them in the act of doing that? It's just a lot for us to be doing right now. So that, I agree with you, and it is a precious resource, and hopefully with education, we can turn people's minds around and get them to jump on board. But I don't feel comfortable right now putting in a regulation on private wells.
So anybody now, if I understand correctly, can go and get a private well if, you know,
Yep.
if you're physically able to. So I see that as far as controlling who is and who is not watering during a, you know, restricted time, as making everybody here's job 1,000 times harder. Because if you get town water in your house, and a lot of people have pulled well permits this year, ironically, right? And so that means that all those people can continue to water their lawns. How I don't know, I just, and that means.
Do I think it's right?
Well,
No,
that
I
also
don't.
means that, you know, I don't know, I think we are really missing a boat by not putting that in place and setting an example. I don't see this as government coming down, I see this as setting an example.
Okay.
And like doing the right thing by the water supply, long term. You know, and so.
I'm trying to do the right thing by the water supply.
But if people are putting in wells left and right to water their
How
lawns.
many wells, how many folks got applications for private wells?
I'm pretty sure that there were probably at least 30.
How would we know that?
We'd have to.
They get
to
pulled.
help
Well,
Yeah.
how did you get that number? I mean, where'd you get that number from?
This, I heard in conversation, I think, I don't know, John, were we talking about it?
No, I don't know,
Somebody-
I know a well driller that's 19 behind right now.
Okay.
So
Just in Harwich?
I don't know if it's just in Howard, you didn't say. but-
Noreen?
But if we were gonna get that figure, we should also get the figure of how many put in new irrigation systems this year, because that's really killing us, I think, more than the wells. But, I just wanted to say that, I think, personally, I think last year, part of the thing was that we had to go to a total ban. Now, at the time, I was fairly new to irrigation and lawn care and things like that, but over the course of the year of reading more and everything else, I now know that I can get by, whether there's a ban or not, I can get by on like 25% of the water that I used to use outside, you know, with different techniques I've learned for using my irrigation. And, you know, guess what? It only needs like 1 day a week or 1.5 days. So to me, it was the total ban that really shocked people, because my grass was good and brown, just like, I don't even know if anything will come back, to tell you the truth, but so be it. But, so that's why, part of the reason that I think education can be such a big help, because then we won't just be, enforcement only happens during the drought. Whereas education, see, I'm gonna be using 2/3 less now all the time, from May through October.
Just give it a pen, just a pen.
You know, so, and we've joked about my records. My water consumption will be down, which will be wonderful for everybody. So if we can, which makes me feel better, because my bills are down too, and I'm not wasting, you know, a valuable resource on something silly like watering my lawn, you know. But if we can, with education, get a whole bunch of more people like me to be using less all the time, I think that does more.
And weren't we down like pumping 2 million gallons last year?
Per day.
So, I mean, people are doing the right thing. The majority of people are doing the right thing. So I'd like to focus on that, doing the right thing, education. And I'm not saying this is never gonna happen. I'm just saying I don't feel comfortable at this point today moving forward with this. So that's just my position.
How about the rain gauges? Do we, on the sprinkler systems?
Yeah, well,
What's the law on that? I know Chatham has one,
one of the things that,
and they inspect it too.
yeah, one of the things that I'm hoping, you know, as part of, and I mentioned it a couple of meetings ago, right, the Lothrop Lawn concept. And I'd like to, and it's, you know, all a matter of time to get everything put together, but Sean Fernandez from the golf department, when he's back from vacation, was gonna put a game plan together for us to rehabilitate the lawn at the Lothrop tank. And I would like to be able to use that as a demonstration for people to see what a healthy Cape Cod lawn can look like, that doesn't require fertilizer, that doesn't require the degree of irrigation that, you know, conventional lawns do, if you will. I also think as part of that, to make sure we can get PR and make people aware that we're doing this demonstration, could include either rain, you know, either
Right.
or both rain barrel campaign, and we could do rain sensor campaigns. We could, you know, there's plenty of ways for us to get the message out. We could give people a $5 credit on their quarterly base rate for proving that they have an active rain gauge on their irrigation system, or, you know, something to that effect, to just incentivize people to use water more responsibly.
Noreen?
Well, just on that note, quickly, I wish there was some way that we could educate, it's not our role, but that we could educate people on their irrigation controls, you know, because, you know, you look outside and you've got yours set to go every other day, and you can see it doesn't need it. If you know how to control your own thing, you just go down and whack it off for that day, and you save so much. But if anybody can ever think of a way, I mean, it's not our role to go into people's homes, and there's so many different manufacturers and everything, but if anybody could ever think of a way to do it, I mean, that could save tons, you know.
Anything else?
I think by upping the fines, stuff like that, I think we're on the right track for this year, anyway.
Judith?
I just respectfully disagree with you guys. I think it's, part, I can talk an hour on this. People are putting in wells to circumvent this. I think properties with short-term rentals are gonna pay the fines. They're not gonna care, number one, that's a problem. Or they're gonna put in that private well to have that green lawn. Because it's part of their business plan to have a green lawn. And I just think, that as a board, we need to support the private wells for irrigation should also be shut off during a water restriction.
I agree.
So,
That well should be shut off, and they should be doing the right thing. I'm just saying, I don't feel comfortable regulating private wells today at this point, is what I'm saying.
because you're afraid of the backlash? And
No.
I'm not saying that sincerely.
Well, I don't appreciate it,
Or-
but no.
No, and I didn't mean that, and I
No,
mean.
I'm not afraid of a backlash.
Do you think that it's
No.
gonna reverse any kind of educational piece? And do you think it's gonna make it harder? Do you think if people are angry about feeling like they're being forced under this law, that it's gonna make it more divisive and that the education piece is not gonna go forward smoothly?
I think,
Because I'm
people-
seeing it as a tool.
I'm not concerned about backlash, because frankly, I'm pretty vocal in my opinions of what I think. I was in favor of this when we put it together.
Yeah.
I thought it was a need. Sitting here in this seat, I understand the need and the want to stop people, or to make people, again, stop. I don't want to be making people and forcing people to do the right thing right now, today. And if you have a private property and you want to spend however many thousands of dollars to drill a well and irrigate your lawn, right now, today, then that's what you could then do that, because people are doing that right now. People who have irrigation, even though we're telling them as a customer not to water, they're still doing it. So, and again, 90% of the town are doing the right thing.
Right.
It's a handful of people, private wells and irrigation, who aren't. I don't want to put laws in because a couple of people are doing the wrong thing to put a law in affecting everyone. I just think today we should go along and try to educate. Maybe that'll flip a switch and people are going to do the right thing. I don't want someone coming into my yard if there is a ban or restrictions on electricity and coming into my house and shutting my lights off because there's a ban, there's a
We're talking
electric
about
shortage.
outside though, right?
I'm just trying to make a point.
Well, I mean, maybe shutting out your outside floodlights in the summer as an example of a comparison, not shutting off your lights in the house.
But if that house has solar, it would be analogous to the situation.
Right.
I would not draw an analogy between solar energy and water.
All right.
They're very different resources.
Maureen?
No,
John? All right. So I'm going to make a motion that we withdraw the regulating of private wells for this year's town meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Me? Okay. Opposed?
Dan, debriefing from the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen.
I don't know that there's more to
to talk about?
discuss. We already captured, but again, I just put that on there just in case there was any.
Again, all I can say is I thought the meeting went very well. I thought they were very receptive with your presentation, and I thank you for, all that information that you put together. I know it's a lot. I look forward to having an assistant wastewater superintendent to lighten your load up a little bit, especially with, the capital projects we have coming forward for the next year. And I think it's being proactive instead of reactive, and you need the help. The bottom line is, I've known you for, I don't know, 6 years now, whatever, 7 years, and I've never known you to ask for help, which is one of my biggest pet peeves. But you're asking for it, you need it, it's the best thing for the town, and I look forward to that, moving forward. But anything else from the meeting? Yeah, I thought it went really well.
It did, it really did.
I look forward to watching it. The funeral is behind.
Well, I'll just add that I think the reason it went so well was Dan's prep for the last at least 3 months, if not longer. They had been over and over that stuff, so finally there was like almost not a question left, so.
That's right.
It was a relief.
Well prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went well.
It did, very well.
Anything else, anybody want to add? Anything? Good? All right, 2022 tank inspection report.
So included in the packet was we just received the reports from the 2022 annual tank inspections. I still need to go through them in a little bit better of a detail, but I will say they are expecting some overcoat pricing from a project they have pending in Brewster. So with respect to the Pleasant Lake storage tank, they did do the adhesion testing and coating thickness analysis as part of this year's reports, and from what I read, the adhesion is in great shape and the thickness is thick enough to support an overcoat, so it would be the significantly cheaper option to maintain the tank than a full sandblast and recoat. So once we get some updated prices from the project in Brewster, they're going to get us some cost estimates to look forward for that. But I believe there was nothing of significance to note needing repairs on the tanks.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty impressive, all 3 tanks. Just some spots, but,
Yeah.
nothing to keep you awake.
I drove by the Lothrop tank, I don't know, a couple days ago, and is that on the bottom of the tank by the ground? Is that like mold or that discoloration?
Mildew, yeah, we could pressure wash
Yeah,
it
could we clean
this
that up?
spring.
It just doesn't
Yeah.
look appetizing.
Yeah, that was one of the selling points of a ground level storage tank, was that we could pressure wash it and clean it ourselves from a
Yeah.
man lift. So that gathers there. If you actually look at the edge of the tank, it actually is wider at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that's from the rain precipitation hitting that. That's why it's that lower, like 4 or 5 feet. But
And that's good news about the Route 39 tank. It's gonna hold its own for until 31.
fingers
As
crossed.
they said it.
Said it.
What would you replace that with?
A similar style that we have over at Pleasant Lake, the fluted steel base,
Oh, yeah.
or could be a concrete base, depending on the cost of steel when we do replace it. But those tank style that we have at 39 with the turnbuckles and everything are notoriously
school.
problematic.
Are they called spider legs or something?
Spider legs,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know, why would they do that? All that exposed metal.
Yeah. And one thing to consider when we do talk about the 39 tank, if I can recall everyone back to our sanitary survey that we had this past year from DEP, where they did recommend relocating our, excavation and operations away from the zone 1s of our wells here. So just throwing that out there as a thought bubble as we approach 2031 and consider rebuilding the tank at 39, it may be worthwhile considering relocating the HQ over across the street there as well. But throwing it out there.
I love this building.
Because they want a bigger separation.
Good, Noreen.
Yeah, essentially all the construction activities, spoils, piles,
Okay.
construction equipment, just on the other side of that garage door is one of our wells.
Okay.
Even if you didn't want to move headquarters, because Gary loves this building, but we could also put like an equipment center there, right? That would solve the problem.
Yeah, my reservations on that is essentially splitting up the department.
Right.
It would be reluctant to recommend having, 10 staff report to one location,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
5 to another. And, you know, those moments of passing in the parking lot where you get to catch up with someone are
Right.
valuable.
No,
you
you're
know.
right.
But-
Good point.
Yeah, it runs pretty smooth. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we would tear this building down per se. I do like it myself. The slate roof is beautiful, you know, but,
We can talk about it later.
It's original equipment.
yeah.
Right.
You know, when I think of how it's transpired, I mean, think where we are now was bump room,
Yeah.
you know? And
See?
Really? This was
History.
a bump room?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Dan wants to.
yeah.
I don't want them.
I had an uncle who was a water commissioner.
Really?
Yeah.
Horse and buggy.
See these old diesel engines? Yeah, talk about old. Yeah.
Actually, Emily just called me back, so before you take off, I'll call her back. Superintendent's report.
I don't think I have anything else to add.
All right, Commissioner's report. Mr. Thompson,
Oh, I'm good.
Ms. Underwood,
Good.
Ms. Donahue.
Well, just one thing, I guess it would have to be an agenda item, not necessarily next meeting, but sometime in the next month or so. Last summer, we started to talk about new sewer regs to go along with Chatham's that we have to approve. And they were mostly standard, but there were a couple of really tricky sections. And Alan and I got bogged down on the one for land intended use plan. And, you know, it had to do with bedrooms and, you know, it's stuff that has some pretty serious repercussions. So I just don't want us to forget about that after we approve it, that it has to go back to Chatham and, you know, kind of goes on forever. But we did kind of push it aside because it was complicated, but I do think we have to revisit it. And I think it's something we have to like plan to revisit because it means reading all that stuff again, which was a lot.
How long are those rates good for?
No, the regs, well,
Yeah. Yeah, regs are, you know, adopted and in place.
Right.
Land use controls are also adopted and in place. If I can kind of build off,
Please.
you know, the conversation. So, the land use controls, right, the flow neutral bylaw that we're balancing amongst the 5 watersheds townwide. There was an excess of 50,000 gallons carried for the East Harwich Village District that's within the Pleasant Bay watershed. What have been talking about so far with respect to the CWMP revisions, because it all kind of ties together, the flow neutral bylaw, the CWMP, as well as the local comprehensive plan that the planning department is embarking on right now. So what we were hoping to do with the CWMP revisions is work in concert with the local comprehensive plan committee to develop for them to develop where they want the town to be 20 years, 40 years, where they want to see the growth, development, things of that nature. And then we would look to ultimately tailor the comprehensive wastewater management plan to accommodate the goals of the LCP group. Now, in order to accomplish the goals of the LCP group, it will likely take action on the Board of Selectmen to revise and reallocate flow within the flow neutral bylaw contained within our regulations. One of the things that I just recently found out was that the local comprehensive plan is going to take probably 2 years to complete. So what I was going to propose next week to the selectmen, I talked about with the planner, was we can do our baseline analysis on our flows, our build-out flow evaluation, and then whatever we have left in surplus capacity amongst the 5 watersheds, we can quantify in metrics that the LCP committee can use. So if we can say, you could, with this amount of flow, you could do 100,000 square feet of commercial space, or you could do 400, single-family homes, or X amount of bedrooms, that then they could kind of take those and apply them within the watersheds as they see fit and in line with what the direction of the LCP is. Now that will ultimately, to memorialize all that, will take the selectmen vote to reallocate the flows. But it's long, complicated, and Noreen's right on that we gotta be. And we also will need to do a bylaw for updating, or not a bylaw, a public hearing for
Go ahead.
updating our rules and regulations
Right.
to either keep or remove the first offense written warning.
That's
with
right.
Yeah,
The water
Yeah.
regs, but
So that's, I'm just saying, at some point, we have to deal with that.
Thank you, Noreen. Mr. Goff? Good?
All set?
All right, next meeting.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
On the well piece, did you need to have that be, all of us voting in affirmative?
Majority.
It doesn't matter, okay. I didn't want to hold something up.
No, that's nice of you, but it's important you have your,
All right, we look at, sticking with Thursday, this April 6th.
it's a full moon that day.
Well, you should be in your best behavior.
I'm trying to coordinate for the next meeting to have GHD come in and go through the cost estimate for Route 28 water
Oh,
main
good.
project.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of coordinating that discussion with DOT to review our cost proposal and update the cost estimate. I have emails going back and forth now. I'm trying to get that meeting scheduled end of next week or the beginning of the week following, so we should be good for the 6th.
Is the 6th good for everybody?
Yeah, 11:30?
I mean, would you feel better with a week later?
I mean, I would keep the pressure on.
You can always change
Yeah,
it,
if someone,
right?
you know,
Could adjust.
We don't want you to let up at all. Well, we might allow you some extra time for getting over the bridge, you
Yeah, right.
know?
All right, we're all good for the 6th. Motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, she called